morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Today, we will go to the political side of it, and we'll not only have politics, but we'll have a few perspectives. I'm going to have Judith Kay introduce our guest very shortly, as we always do, as a modus operandi up here, David. You might remember, we always try to start with a kudo or two. And it just seems appropriate to me that since I discussed it with the Major Domo here on my right-hand side, we just finished the Logan County Fair here last week, and we've had Mike Mosky and
Dave Irwin.
Dave Irwin, thank you. The old fellow went again. Anyway, we've had them up there to talk about the fair, but it seems to me appropriate that there's a lot of Dave Irwins and Mike Moskys who, without the titles, who do a lot of work out there, a lot of volunteers. A lot of folks come in who are not really associated with the fair per se as employees, but serve as judges, and there's just a lot of volunteer work. And so kudos to those folks who have completed another successful county fair. You know, my judgment of it is that we're lucky to have the county fair that we do here, and it's gone on for 80-some years now. Started in 1936, which is pretty remarkable. And it's times change, you know, the old saying, the old order changes, giveth way to the new. In that context, some county fairs don't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And the more is a pity for that, because it's a great thing for the community. And it's a different fair than we used to know it. But it's a great fair, so a lot of folks do a lot of work, so thank you very much. Why don't we introduce our guest this morning, because this good-looking young dude is just chomping at the bit to answer some questions, and we're going to bring the elephant right into the tent very soon.
Well, just an aside, at one point, a number of years ago, the Logan County Fair was written up in the Smithsonian magazine as the cleanest county fair in the known world.
Well,
now see?
Here I am, almost on my way out of here, and never knew that.
Oh, you did too. Well, speaking of some of us in this room getting older, this is kind of fun for me. What the hell are you looking at me for? This is a young fellow who went to school with one of Bill's kids, one of my kids. And it's always so beautiful to see someone grow up to be somebody big and important, David Bender. It's awfully nice to see you. I haven't seen you for an ever so long time, and you haven't changed one whit.
And he's not a legend in his own mind.
Well, listen, Judy Busby, I remember growing up in Beeson, and you mentioned Dave Irwin, another fellow Beesonite. I remember growing up in Beeson and getting up on the farm, getting up early, and the radio coming on, and there's that lovely voice of yours, which, my dear, has not changed one bit.
See,
so
I told you she was old.
Every morning I would wake up, and that radio trader right there, I would hear it all the time. So
the radio raider.
Great to hear your voice again.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
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 Well, and now you are the chairman of the Logan County Republican Party.
Yes, ma'am.
And this county is quite heavily Republican. What would the breakdown be? Do you have any idea?
You know, I think generally we have about a 75%, 25%. We kind of used to be you'd check on U of I trustee vote to really determine what your margin would be. Now, since they did away with that, which was unfortunate, we now kind of gauge it on how many people vote in the Republican primary versus how many Democrats vote in the Republican primary, and it breaks down to low to mid 70s to low to mid 20s.
Just for the nuts of it, let's continue in that vein just for a minute. This business of a closed as opposed to an open primary.
Yeah.
Now, in an open primary, you'd really have a bed sheet ballot.
Yes, you would.
Yeah, you certainly would. But this closed primary has been a bone of contention with any number of people over the years. And it used to be said that way when they did their hiring, they'd know how people voted and they could check it out. Yeah. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But now it's just done that way because it's just done that way. However, no matter how we do it, at least we do a primary.
Right.
Now, I just came back last night from northern Minnesota, and they just have caucuses up there.
Right.
So that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of a laissez-faire approach, I think, to choosing candidates. Well, where do you stand on how was this practice of a closed primary instituted?
That's an interesting question because it's just sometimes we here in Illinois or in downstate Illinois, we like tradition. We like the way things have gone in the past.
You want to believe it.
You want to believe, right. You know, you got to think of it more of globally rather than just Logan County or Lincoln area. City of Chicago would absolutely not be for an open primary. They want it closed as can be, because you know we visited off air that I get to Chicago quite a bit with my job, at least a couple times a day. So I've gotten to know quite a bit of people, and my political activity over the years too. Gotten to know a lot of the political people up there, and lots of members of elected offices in the Chicagoland area. Let me tell you, there are a ton of Republicans in Chicago. They don't dare vote Republican, though, because of business or just how things are. I mean, in state of Illinois, patronage with when Jim Thompson was governor, and there was that lawsuit where Susan Rutan sued the state because she was denied a promotion based on her political affiliation, and thus it went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where they ruled you cannot hire or promote based on political affiliation. It became the law of the land, and you were personally liable if you were found, if you were just a human resource person or a person in charge of hiring someone from the Department of Agriculture. If you didn't cover your bases and hire strictly by the Rutan law, you would be personally and civilly liable.
Boy, I bet that scared Chicago.
Well, it didn't really scare Chicago, but it scared downstate Illinois and state of Illinois government, where there's an absolute executive order and a law that you can't do that. So now political patronage has no play. And so that's why it's tough for, you know, smaller counties in downstate where some of the county chairmen grew up in that area. They were older. They were used to it, both Democrat and Republican, depending upon which administration. But it's certainly not the case today at all. I can assure you I don't get a single call from anyone asking for a job at corrections, and I haven't had a single call in years, simply because you can't do anything. You can't help people, and even if I could, no one would listen to me down in Springfield because they don't want to lose their home or their livelihood on that.
Well, nobody does.
Right.
But doesn't that ultimately kind of level the playing field?
Yes, it does. I think now you're seeing the better people being hired into state employment. Obviously, there's a veterans preference, which there should be. And, you know, as before the Iraq War, you know, the veterans, the most recent veterans were the Vietnam era veterans, and they were getting older. And so they weren't applying for jobs. So you could see people like Jim Ash and myself that would be eligible to get jobs with the state of Illinois because there wasn't that many veterans to it. But now, with the Iraq War, you're seeing a lot of very good, qualified people that are veterans. And actually, those are the most remarkable people that are getting these jobs, and deservedly so.
648-5510. Somebody might have a question to ask with Joe Sapp. Oh, I mean, David Benner.
You know, you mentioned Joe Sapp. I remember back in the early 90s on Halloween, I found an old trench coat, a couple of boxes of cigars, and an old tie from Judge McCullough's chambers, which was pretty wide. You could probably drive a car on it, and went door to door with a fedora. I went door to door. I kept my head down as Joe Sapp, and people you could hear saying, "Why in the heck is Joe Sapp at my door?"
Oh, God.
And so, a lot of fun.
I don't think he ever lit a cigar.
No, he just chewed him.
Just chewed him.
His sister, Ella, I think it was, loved Stag beer, and they lived across the street from me when I grew up on 4th Street, and I would buy him a box of cigars to chew on, and Ella a case of Stag beer. So,
oh, gosh.
This is talking about patronage. When Greg was in high school, I got him a job at the state school, doing whatever they told him to do. A grunt, mowing grass, whatever they told him to do. And I paid for that for the next 35 years.
Exactly. With tickets and all that. Yeah,
Joe, I said, after about the 22nd year, I said, Joe, how long do I have to pay for this job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rumor was Joe would go around to these state offices and wait outside their door, and they just didn't want to talk to him, and he just bugged them so much they said bring him in to get him out of here, and he would, on the way, he would see ladies that were expecting or pregnant, and we'd say, I'll get that job. I'll get that job.
He in the annals in the 102 counties, he was unique.
He was.
He just was
absolutely
unique, and a gentleman, fine guy.
Oh, yes.
But a whole different time, different system.
He had a job to do, and he did it well.
Oh, he did it very well. It was interesting. Let's get serious with it. Speaking in that vernacular, though, at that time, all of the precinct committeeman positions were filled, and usually you had kind of a little pool.
Right.
That's not the case today, David?
We have 3 vacant ones.
Is that right?
And we when I took over as chairman, along with Jeff Short, who still is very active and very involved, I'm blessed to have really a good guy with Jeff, who really is an amazing person and will do anything to help the party or just people. He's really a people person first and a party person second. But when we got together, we said, this is a great opportunity for us to really get some good people that are believers in this. It used to be the committeeman where people, this is why I need to be a committeeman so I could get my son or daughter or my grandson, granddaughter, or relative or neighbor a job. Not the case anymore today. That's we have true believers, and it's tougher to find those people. And it's hard work out there, especially with today. There's not a lot of hand-to-hand combat type situations. All done through media, radio, TV, digital now, Facebook ads, and social media. You're not seeing a lot of traditional campaign methods.
I know.
So it's tougher to get those people.
So you used to go door to door all the time.
One thing that Jeff and I wanted to do is really kind of get more professional people involved. People like Dr. Paul Mason from Mount Pulaski and his brother Dr. Bruce Mason lives in Latham. I mean, it was tough getting a committeeman in Latham because it's really the only predominant Democrat area. Yeah. And so getting those two, a couple of professionals in there as well, really kind of helped, bring things up a little bit and professionalize our party. I mean, they're busy, but as you two know, you find busy people. Those are the people you want to be involved in local activities because they know how to manage their time a little bit better, and so that's something that we've tried to do. So we have 3 vacancies right now. Interestingly enough, since you opened the door here, the Democratic Party in Logan County does not exist legally today. They did not have a single person run for precinct committeeman on the ballot this last March.
Interesting.
And in order to have a party, you have to have a central committee. 0 people ran, and since there was no chairman, because you have to be chairman of a party, you have to be an elected precinct committeeman, elected or appointed or voted upon by your fellow precinct committee men or women. And there was no one to do that. I'm not sure why they didn't do it, if they just thought of it as an oversight. So right now, the Logan County Democratic Party, by state law, by State Board of Elections, does not exist. So they're still calling themselves the party here in Logan County, but they're basically just a social club or an organization off to the side. But that's happened twice now in the state of Illinois. Stark County does not have a Democratic Party, and now Logan County does not.
Yeah, magnificent thing that had up in Cook County, but that's...
Yeah, no kidding. But I look at it as this. We like competition. Competition makes everything better.
Well, it brings out better people.
It does.
Although in this case, this particular election, I'm not sure if that's the case.
Well, it's going to be a challenge all the way around, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I like to have different viewpoints because that's what keeps us fresh on our toes and work a little bit harder.
You mentioned a little bit ago something about LDC, and is there any plan other than mowing grass and keeping the boiler going?
I think they're trying to find stuff. I know when I was, I took a leave of absence during the 2004 gubernatorial campaign, I believe it was, when Senator Brady, it might have been 2006, I'm sorry, when Senator Brady was the nominee of the Republican Party running against Pat Quinn. And little inside baseball here. We wanted to, times were not good. The state was in bad condition, not unlike today, but probably not as bad as today. Worse today because of, you know, the inactivity and getting things done and lack of leadership. But one of the things was the senator asked me, could you help put together a 100-hour plan, a 100-day plan? And I said, absolutely. And he says, I want to see some immediate results of streamlining government and savings, some absolute cost savings. So I worked from Labor Day and helped on the campaign a little bit, and by night just sat down and just kind of researched and connected with some people that I worked with in government under the Edgar administration. And one of the things that I came to was Concordia is where the home of the Department of Corrections. It's the headquarters of the Department of Corrections. They've paid rent for that. I believe they own that now, but in the past they paid rent for that place
big time,
12 times over. 12 times what it was. And so here we have this beautiful facility. I looked at, talked to some correctional people that were high up in the corrections in previous administrations and asked them what is the requirement for that. And one of the things was it had to be nearby a correctional facility to help, you know, kind of maintain it or something. Well, we have 2 of them in our backyard here, and a wonderful facility. In fact, the director of corrections, the temporary director of corrections today, lives in one of those cells out there. He's temporary. He's just brought here to find his replacement. I'm told he has found his replacement, and they will do it. But it would be so great to have the corrections department here, and that was our plan to do that. It would have had a tremendous cost savings. It would have been great for the community. I just think it would have been much more efficient being out and around away from downtown Springfield. There's no reason why it's in downtown Springfield. Well, so it would have been terrific to have it, but unfortunately the results in about 19,000 vote plurality didn't make it happen. So,
well, that's kind of how things are done, though, even by us private citizens. You know, why do we do it this way? Well, we've always done it this way.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do that.
Go ahead.
I would like to know about this 100 million signatures on petitions to have this panel that was going to decide the boundary lines of the districts instead of the gerrymandering that, for instance, put Larry Bompke out of business.
Yes.
Which was a darn shame, because there are 2 things about him. He was still is, a smart man and an honest man.
Yes.
Now, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, big time. We miss Larry every day, and I see him, and his smile's a little broader these days, but he's still a great guy. And, you know, I believe he could have won that district as well, but he didn't want to get involved in a messy primary fight. That would have been close, but Larry could have won that.
Well, I think that's the case, but I think for the Bompke family, on a personal basis, they're the better off for that. But we lost.
We did as a state. Well, so then, some judge in his infinite wisdom said that that's unconstitutional. Now, according to whose constitution and why? I'm sorry.
Well, you got to go back to all things Michael Madigan, Speaker Michael Madigan.
I know that. Well,
you have to go
back. Don't even say his name to me. It makes me nauseous.
I'm very sorry, but we have to speak the truth here today. And the truth is, you know, this is not in the Speaker's best interest to have a commission do an equal and bipartisan commission do the redistricting. Now, keep in mind, one of Michael Madigan's former law partners and one of his very, very best friends is a gentleman who has basically filed the petition to object to this, saying it was unconstitutional, and took it to court and got a judge to side with him. Keep in mind, Mike Madigan is a very brilliant individual. He's a very strategic thinking individual, but he also is, I remember when I was working for Governor Edgar, he got involved in a Supreme Court race, and we usually just kind of kept hands off, and judges were like, well, they don't really do anything for us. Why would we ever get involved in a judge's race? And we couldn't figure out why Speaker Madigan put all his millions in on this one Supreme Court judge race years and years ago. And we couldn't figure it out, and of course his candidate won, and then we saw the the balance of power tipped 4-3 on the Illinois Supreme Court. And when it came time to make these decisions, ironically, a lot of these decisions were 4-3. And we got to thinking, he's right. You need these judges in your corner, and that's why you're seeing these, $3 and $4 and $7 million Supreme Court judges races up there, because it is so important. And the problem is his friend Mr. Lou Casper, who's the attorney that filed this, the Speaker knows many judges. That Cook County Democratic Party endorses, which is like basically appointing judges up there. I mean, he's put most of them in there. Let's face it, he's supported most of them that are in there today.
Just for the nuts of it, what did he do before he became king on the hill or whatever?
Well, I can't remember that long ago. I think the guy to your left might be the only one that's old enough, older than Mr. Madigan, that still has his wits about him, that can figure that out. But he is 70. I believe he's 74 years old. And, a personable guy. He's a family man. He is, always smiling. You see him in the hallways.
That's because you wonder what he's been up to. That's why.
I mean, I've ridden the elevator with him several times, and he's very, very nice. Asks about the family, and you think, wow, how can a guy be that ruthless? Surely it's just, a persona of him, but he is a really, really strategic thinker. And, Governor Edgar was a brilliant political mind, too. And he and Speaker Madigan respected one another. It was about respect. They didn't necessarily work best friends, and they didn't necessarily like one another really a lot, but they respected one another a lot, and that's how a lot of things got done.
I wonder if we've had a state of Kansas, they meet 4 months out of 24 months.
Yeah.
And things roll on swimmingly well there.
Yeah.
Then they're like the Jeffersonian idea. They came to legislate, then they go back home to the fields and work.
Right.
It's a shame. It's never going to happen here. But it's a shame that we can't emulate that type of
and that's
legislation.
True. And that's true. But you look at our state. I look at this as a double-edged sword here. Our state is so diverse. I mean, you have the city of Chicago, and then you have the suburbs around Chicago, and then you have basically the outskirts of the Rockford area, and then you have what they call downstate, and then you have deep southern Illinois, and then you have the metro east or southwestern Illinois. They're really all different from the people that live there, from their cultures, their way of life, their political thinking, and it's really, really diverse. I mean, and you're starting to see a lot of ethnic population move in, obviously not just in Chicago, but the suburbs. I mean, the suburbs, the Republicans owned the suburbs in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And then you see this shift. And Republicans, frankly, didn't go about this the right way. They looked at women were the #1 Republican voters in the suburbs. And so what the Republicans did for years is they scared them. They made everything about fear and safety. And yet, and it worked in the 70s. They made them feel safe. Women wanted to feel safe in the suburbs, and they wanted to make sure their kids were safe, and their husbands had secure jobs. But what the Republicans didn't realize is with the changing times in the 90s and the 2000s, you were looking at, they were now taking the women, those same women were taking care of their kids, getting them off to school, soccer practice, but they're also taking care of their aging parents. And so that they became a little bit more socially moderate rather than socially conservative. They were starting to really kind of get in it because that was their lives. And so fear no longer worked with them. Their #1 concern was, how am I going to take care of my parents? What type of medical facilities we're going to get? And how am I going to get my kids to school and soccer on time?
I got so involved here I forgot to look at the clock. And we work on the capitalistic system here, and we have sponsors, and we're going to recognize them right now. Go right ahead, Jim Rice. And having paid obeisance with great thanks to our sponsors, we're right back live in the studios here. The program is Viewpoint. Our guest this morning, Mrs. Busby, your friend and mine, and Logan County, David Bender, County Chairman, Logan County Republican Party. The only legal party in the county, as I find this morning. David, we haven't, the elephant's been standing outside the tent, stiffing his nose underneath the edge of the tent here. Let's just bring him into the room. How does it happen that we Republicans almost trying to stab ourselves in the foot and drive a spike through our mouths at the same time nationally. It's the strangest thing. Here I am, almost 93 years old, and I've never ever, and it got nasty in the olden days. My God, they maligned Abe Lincoln something fierce, but I've never seen anything quite like this today. This is a phenomenon.
Yes.
And it's. How do you see this in Logan County? How do you think this is going to strip out here? But then more importantly, what do you think of our candidate?
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you see this every 20 years, every 25 years. Ross Perot, last probably example. It's close enough.
I never will forgive him. He trotted old Admiral Jim Stockdale.
I know it, and that was a mistake.
That was a vicious thing to have.
Very, very bad. He was not, maybe in his younger days would have been a wonderful candidate.
Yeah,
but you're exactly right. There's just there's a sense of, especially here in Illinois, people just fed up, and they just have had it with all the debt, the lack of leadership, the bickering back and forth, the ruling of one party, the money that's coming into this. And I just think Donald Trump, I think people said, okay, they hit the Staples reset button, and are just starting all over. They're just tired of everything. Mm-hmm. They like the fact that the political correctness thing, and when you're a candidate and you have to say things that kind of smooth things over for both sides, people can read through that and smell right through it. And I think Donald Trump, with his brashness and his temperament, I think people really tapped into that.
I think you're exactly right.
I just think they did.
Why else did he keep winning?
Exactly. And blew everyone away, and some great candidates out there.
Yeah.
Terrific candidates.
And a whole bunch of them.
A bunch of them. Mm-hmm. And we all thought, okay, well, he's one more stupid thing that he's going to say away, and out he goes. And every time he would say things a little bit more unusual or dumber than the last, he just would get more popular and more popular. And it's mind-numbing. And I just think people feel he's a microcosm of a lot of our society. People are angry, and they're just frustrated and fed up. And I think he was their candidate. Mm-hmm. And at the Logan County Fair, which, by the way, we paved our pavilion this year.
Yeah, did a great job there.
Had some great volunteers to do it, and we also owe the Motor Speedway out there, Macon Speedway, for partnering with us to make it, because they utilize it as well. But normally at a county fair, you don't really pass out yard signs. You just don't. People don't want to carry them around and all that stuff.
That day's gone.
I think in my 6-7 years as chairman, I want to say we've probably given out maybe 10 total yard signs out there. This year we went through 200 Trump signs. I remember opening day was Tuesday, but I remember Sunday horse races were going on, and we were still getting set up, and we had everything all set. Jeff Short and I had everything set up in there, and there were people coming in grabbing these Trump signs and carrying around the fair for the next 4 hours with them. Those are passionate people.
Now, that's a very interesting observation. Here you are in the breadbasket of America, so to speak. Yeah. Always, we all know about conservatism and why we are. But the polls don't pick up on those when they're showing 23 points behind, or 10 points behind, or 13, whatever it is. But they don't have a tap on what you just alluded to.
Right.
And that is grassroots America. And they're coming in. Right. They want the signs.
Here's the other thing, too,
That's
Bill,
amazing.
is 99% of those people that came in and got signs, I didn't know them. Never met them, never laid eyes on them, didn't know who they were. And they all chatted with me, and they all have said the same thing. We've had it. Even to them, they say he says things that makes them cringe, but they're all for it. They think we need a real shakeup in this country, and it just kind of surprised me and floored me that people would feel this way, and really at this time in our lives want a candidate like him that would come in and say it. And I mean, in the convention, his kids on, I don't know if you watched the convention, his kids were phenomenal.
Oh, they were that.
Phenomenal. In fact, I'm wishing, are any of you 35? Maybe you should be the candidate on this. But he is really tied in something. And since then, he's really, look, the liberal media, I know a lot of people think Republicans and conservatives blame everything on the liberal media, but the facts are liberal media exists out there, and they're out. They're going to control. They're going to control his message.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if he was, if the second coming was a Republican, that would never get noted in the, in the paper.
And, you know, we have Fox News, and, you know, even they're a little bit too way out there for me, in my taste, on some things.
I know, but in order to hit the middle road,
you got to have that.
You got to have both.
Right.
And there are two sides to everything. And nothing is one-sided. And I watch a lot of Fox News. You do too, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, you have to, because everything isn't as black and white as the mainstream media would have you believe.
Right.
And what do you hear when you go to a big meeting like you've just attended from the people? What do you think is going to happen ultimately there? Because I think 4 more years, I think my kids, my grandkids, and my great-grandkids now are saddled with this debt that we have federally. And we're going to go into a couple more generations if we have 4 more years of this. Nothing, there's no free lunch.
No. You know, what I'm hearing out there in Republican circles, and then I'll talk about business circles, is that there is a huge vacuum of leadership right now. There is no leadership whatsoever. And I think in the Republican circles, I think they're looking at Trump thinking there's no way he's going to win. And if you listen to me earlier about, this grassroots and the people out there, the silent majority, you actually think you got a chance. But if you do the math, and we can get into the Electoral College pretty soon, he truly does not have a chance. He truly doesn't. And I'm sorry to say that to the listeners out there that may be supporting him. I support him as well, too. I think he's got a lot of great things going for him, but he's truly not going to be able to win this election based on the Electoral College. I mean, you can't go after Latinos and Hispanics and expect to win Florida. He's got to win Florida, and he's down so much in Florida, I don't see a path. Without him winning Florida, he has no path of winning this election. It's over, and that's 29 Electoral College votes. You got to make up for stuff like in California, where no Republican's going to win out there. So he's simply, I know he's frustrated. I know he sees illegal immigration. I think almost all Americans are frustrated with that. I think there's got to be a better way about it. I'm very much involved in fact, I'm co-founder of the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition, which is a bipartisan coalition. An Irishman in Chicago and I co-founded this, who owns a lot of restaurants in Chicago, Billy Lawless. And it's to basically talk a little bit about immigration reform from a business standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and plus from a humanity standpoint. What we would like to see, rather than talking about deportation and building walls and making them pay for it and all this, is maybe coming up with a real comprehensive and sensible solution to immigration reform. I mean, take all these countries that we give money to that in aid and foreign aid that just stab us in the back and treat us horrible and bomb our citizens and treat them bad, and yet we still give them financial aid. Withdraw all that financial aid, take that money, hire a bunch of Americans that are in need of a job, and strengthen our security of our borders by better passports, better visas, and checking who these people are, vetting these people that wish to come here. There's a reason why people want to come here.
Oh, well,
it's a great place.
Well, if you were just having to cross a line in the sand from Mexico to get here, why not? Give it a try at any rate, because it is going to be a better life.
Right. Exactly. And let's face it, the baby boomer generation, which were traditional Republicans, they're going away. Oh my! And we're not replenishing that. And so really the second best GOP voters from a social standpoint, and from looking at all the things that the Republican Party standpoint, what they stand for, are Latinos.
You could refer to that as a gene pool, so to speak.
Oh, we do.
Because that self-perpetuating.
Latinos are very much into their religion, very much anti-government. They want government out of their lives. They want to work hard, pay their taxes, and they want to be left alone. They want to just build a better lives for their families. And they're very pro-religion, same as the Republican idealistic viewpoint. It's the same thing. Yet we basically just do everything we can to cast them aside and say you're really not one of us. And that's why the Republican Party is getting hurt, and that's why they're going to be the minority party in the White House for probably the next 4 years anyway.
And locally, we have, you sent me a note, and I appreciate that very much, in the House. We have 71 Democrats to 47 Republicans.
Yeah.
What a plurality that is.
That's a veto-proof majority.
And I don't see that. I don't see that changing in any major way at all in the near future.
Yeah, and even though that's a veto-proof majority, there's a condensed of that majority is the African American caucus in the city of Chicago, and they give Speaker Madigan fits. It's not just you're going to do what I say, but eventually when it comes down to the time when it's basically okay, you with us or against us, they're with the Democrats. I remember serving on a panel last election, post-election, to kind of talk a little bit about Republican, Democrat, and what went wrong, what went right, both of them. And of course, I didn't have much to say about what went right because we got cleaned. But there was a gentleman named Will Davis who was a state representative from the city of Chicago, African American, and really a fine gentleman. And he leaned over to me after the thing was over. He's like, "Look, when are you Republicans going to come after our voters?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And he says, "You need to recruit. You need to court us. You need to come after the African American vote." I go, "Will, we do." Senator Brady, when he was running for governor, there's 13 bishops, black bishops in Chicago, very influential people, with endorsements of 9 of them. 9 of the 13. Yet Senator Brady didn't even break the 15% African American percentage in Cook County, in the city of Chicago. I said, "What else do we have to do?" He says, "You need to figure out a way because they treat us like second-class citizens, and we're looking." I said, "Well, whose fault is that? We've basically opened our arms and said, we'll work with you. We'll come with you." When Governor Jim Edgar in 1994, who won by 37 points, biggest plurality margin in the history of the state of Illinois, when he went down, and East St. Louis has 10,000 voters, 90% of them black, Jim Edgar got 210 votes.
Oh, gosh.
210. And he was popular. Yeah. So what do you have to do as a Republican?
Well, part of this great problem is, I've bemoaned it many times, the entitlement system. Those who say, "Give me," and we continue to give them. We've got professional mothers out there because they get money and they won't work. You don't need to work because we're taking care of them. That's just a small part of the entitlement business.
Well, look at Bernie Sanders. I mean, with the free college for everybody. I mean, and that was an interesting.
In the face of any kind of common sense.
Interesting. I think I remember him saying, 1 cent per trade transaction on Wall Street was how he's going to fund that. Interesting concept. But a lot of younger people, it wasn't necessarily a racial issue or an ethnic issue. Younger people really love that, and it's that mentality. What are you going to give me? And interesting concept. Disagree with it, but by golly, look at the popularity he had on that, and almost pulled it off.
But how in the world did he convince so many people that there was going to be, quote, free, unquote, college? There is nothing free. Nothing
you're right.
in the world.
Yeah.
But that word stood out to him in great, huge, bold letters.
It sure did.
But somebody's got paid for that.
Yeah. Well, there was a movement, and I don't know if you all watch The Circus. It's on Showtime on Sunday nights. It's a behind-the-scenes look at the political campaigns, 30 minutes every week. Mark Halperin, Jim Heilman, 2 former political reporters. They work for Bloomberg Politics now. And then Mark McKinnon, who ran the Bush campaigns down in Texas. They look behind the scenes on that, and you really got a different look at Bernie Sanders and his lovely young wife, who were really charming. Very relaxed. You didn't see a ton of Secret Service around him. When they sat down and talked to him, there were no staff protecting what he said.
Old common shoe approach.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think some of the younger generation's going back to that.
Yeah,
I really do. So it's kind of unique to see that dichotomy right there. I think it's interesting.
Well, do we have any local offices that will be unfilled? We do such. Of course, Judy and I are pretty prejudiced about our courthouse staff. We've got a wonderful group up there in that courthouse. That included your wife before she left, who she's doing. By the way, Carla's job title is
appellate court clerk. of the 4th District.
Yes.
So she oversees 7 judges, 2 of them which are from Logan County here,
Yeah,
Judge
that's a
Turner,
neat
Judge
part,
Harris,
you know.
another classmate of ours, Judge Harris.
2 outstanding.
Oh,
2
wonderful.
outstanding.
And a great court, very professional. And she runs a staff of about 15 people, is in charge of that beautiful building. Used to be the old IDOT Waterways building down across from the Capitol. And really does a great job. I think there's close to 40 counties within her district, so a very large geographic area. Loves her job, does a great job, and performs a vital service. Misses the courthouse.
She's an emeritus courthouse associate.
But no, you're right. We have a tremendous group of county elected officials.
Yes, we have.
Outstanding. And, you know, the state's attorney's pay and the sheriff's pay are kind of mandated. But, you know, the other ones are, you know, you compare them to other counties that are like size, they're underpaid, but they're not doing it for the pay. They're doing it because they love service, they love this community, and all of them are phenomenal. And I know they're getting up there. Some of them are getting up there in, you know, their careers. So we're starting to look at, you know,
we need to groom somebody.
We do, and they find themselves. They groom some of their own people, and I'm convinced that once they do decide to go, they will find some good people and great candidates.
Yeah. Judy, go ahead. We're gonna have to wrap it up here. One final question.
I just don't have another question for you, except I just want to thank you for coming, and I hope you'll come again. This has been very interesting to me.
Yeah, have me back. I'll come anytime.
Well, thank you, David.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Now, I would like to mention that he was in Chicago last night and got up a little extra early to get down here to help us out. So we appreciate David Bender being with us today.
Thanks.
You know, you might remember, I heard that you listen once in a while here. We always try to close with a comment. And I found this one, and it sure is right on the mark. It's a good thing we don't get all the government we pay for.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you, David Bender, for being with us today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.